Welcome, Brian Reese here, the VA Claims Insider, coming at you live from Austin, Texas. I'm an Air Force service disabled veteran. Gang, we're talking about compensation and pension exams today. It seems to be a topic that just never goes away, right? It's a big deal for most vets because the compensation and pension exam is the single most important day in the entire process. There's no question about it. There's no substitute for being prepared for your compensation and pension exam. You have to be ready to share your uncomfortable truths, okay? You have to be uncomfortably vulnerable with the examiner, all right? And I'm going to be taking you through some of my top 10 tips today to help you successfully navigate compensation and pension exam. So before I jump in though to the VA compensation pension exam tips, I just want to give a quick disclaimer. We are not accredited VSOs. We're not accredited agents. We're not accredited attorneys. We are not affiliated with the Department of Veterans Affairs in any way. Okay. There's lots of free resources out there, vets. If you want to find an accredited VSO agent, etc., to help you prepare and file a claim, awesome. At the same time, I also have some videos out on YouTube where I show you step-by-step how to prepare and file your own claim, your own fully developed claim on the new VA.gov website, which is incredible, by the way. My hat's off to the VA for everything that they've done to up-level the technology for veterans. It's incredible. This video, what we're talking about today, is for informational and educational purposes only. Okay, we may talk about some different disability conditions. It is not medical advice, okay, and it does not substitute for the medical advice from your doctor or from other certified, credentialed, and qualified and licensed healthcare professionals, okay? This is also not legal advice. These are my opinions only based upon the things that we've learned over the past 10 plus years, okay? And then VA Claims Insider has been in existence now since about 2016, okay? So please, this is not medical advice. This is not legal advice. It is for informational and educational purposes only. Awesome. Okay, let's jump into this though. Compensation and pension exams, the number one most important day. Absolutely, without question, bar none. It is the number one most important day in the entire VA claims process. You must know your uncomfortable truths, okay? And by the way, gang, like let's just go right to tip number one, okay? I don't want to waste any more time here. The compensation and pension exam is the single most important day in the entire VA claims process, period, bar none, end of story. The reason why that is because we've seen VA raters rely almost solely upon the results of your compensation and pension exams, okay? Now, that isn't legal, by the way. The VA rater is required by law to consider all competent and credible evidence from primary and secondary sources, okay? But that isn't what we've seen. What we've seen is they base their rating decision almost solely on the opinions and the written language of the compensation and pension examiner. Something's got to change, gang. I just don't know what's happening. I don't know why they're placing such an emphasis on the results of the C&P exam. Okay, it's garbage and it's not legal, but it's happening all the time. Okay, so that being said, though, the reason why I say it's the number one most important day is because it is your in-person exam, okay, typically. Now, we're dealing with COVID-19 stuff. We have seen a lot of these C&P examiners now are doing telemedicine, telehealth. They're doing video teleconference C&P exams. Sometimes they're doing telephonic exams, meaning a nurse practitioner will just call you on the phone to do the exam. That's an interesting one for me. I'm not exactly sure how you conduct an adequate medical examination over the phone, but we're seeing that. I don't know if that's part of the VA's ACE process, if they think they have enough medical evidence. But it's been interesting to see this unfold over time. Okay. But tip number one, compensation and pension exam, you must be open, honest, and truthful at all times, okay, in the VA claim process, especially during your VA C&P exams, okay? Do not ever lie or stretch the truth, okay? First of all, it's against the law, okay? It's against the law. It's a false claim, and there are severe civil and criminal penalties for lying, okay, or stretching the truth. So please do not ever do that. And second, you run the risk of having your exam results tossed out, or worse, they just deny the claim, right? If the examiner says something in there like, the veteran is malingering, or, isn't being honest or truthful, or said this, but the record says this, if the rater relies solely on the C&P exam results, they're going to toss it out and deny your claim. Okay, that's the most likely situation and scenario there. So please always be open, honest, and truthful. Now, what I mean, all you got to do, gang, is tell the examiner about your symptoms. Tell him or her how your disability condition is limiting or affecting your life in a negative way. Okay, that's it. Okay, so that's tip number one. Just make sure you're open, honest, and truthful. Tip number two, read through your military medical records, your VA medical records, and any private medical records to include reports, okay? Now, the reason why I say this is you got to know what's in your record, okay? Because hopefully it's a requirement that the compensation and pension examiners have read through your situation prior to the C&P exam, okay? They're supposed to have gone through and looked at your history. What happened on active duty? Is there any VA records for me to look at? Are there any private medical records that this veteran uploaded? Okay, but you have to know what's in your record, because if you don't know, how are you going to explain your condition to the examiner? Okay, the other thing I think is important is for you to know what's in your medical record, so that the examiner, who's supposed to have reviewed your records, when you're communicating with him or her about what you're dealing with, there's a direct connection, okay, between what's in the written record and what you're telling them, okay? So one of the things that I think about is when you're going to your C&P exam, do you have a diagnosis already for that condition, yes or no? Number two, is there some type of logical link or connection between the disability that you've claimed, what the examiner is looking at, okay, and your active duty service? Remember, that's that nexus piece, and it has to be there. The nexus has to be there, and it needs to be clear, but I think you need to be prepared to talk about it. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you are in a examination for sleep apnea, okay, and while you were on active duty, you never went through a sleep study, but there are subjective complaints in your service treatment records of insomnia, daytime sleepiness, maybe somebody noticed snoring, so you went into the doctor. Those are subjective symptoms that occurred on active duty in your service treatment records, but maybe you never went through a sleep study. So you never got the sleep apnea diagnosed in service. So here we are years later. Let's assume you've gone through a sleep study recently, you were diagnosed with obstructive sleep apnea, and now here you are at your exam, okay, your C&P exam. Make sure that you tell the examiner if you believe this to be true. Hey, I know I had obstructive sleep apnea on active duty. I went in for sleep issues numerous times. I was prescribed medications to help me sleep. It just wasn't diagnosed until after I left the service, right? And by the way, here's a statement from my spouse who lived with me at the time. She witnessed me having these issues, these troubles breathing, etc. You got to be prepared to talk about that stuff, right? So even if you don't necessarily have a diagnosis in your active duty service treatment records, you can still be prepared to explain the issue, okay, at your compensation and pension exam. So that's tip number 2, gang. You got to go through your records, okay? This is all about preparation and making sure you're ready to go, okay? Tip number 3, you got to get inside the law, okay? You need to know. You don't need to be a lawyer to be able to read federal law, okay? I'm not asking you to make legal arguments. What I'm asking you to do is make sure that you've reviewed the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 38, Part 4, the schedule for rating disabilities for each condition that you're claiming. Okay, I think it's absolutely crucial because 38 CFR Part 4, the schedule for rating disabilities, it's the federal law that governs all VA disability conditions and ratings, okay, which, by the way, there's over 830 conditions under the law, okay, that you may be eligible for. And I have a free ebook, by the way. I have a free ebook. If you go to our website at vaclaimsinsider.com, if you scroll across the top menu bar, there's a drop down that says free resources, and it's one of the ebooks there. There's actually 5 very awesome, high-value resources that took us a long time to put together that we give to you for free. Okay, it's free. All you got to do is opt in, and I'll send you that guide, the secret guide to 833 rateable VA disabilities. Again, you can download your free copy right now at www.vaclaimsinsider.com. Okay, now regarding the law and the general schedule, I think that you should at least have a baseline of your symptoms, okay? Now, when you're at your exam, you don't need to be explaining every single symptom that you read out of the law, okay? The symptoms that are listed in 38 CFR are meant to be a general overall picture of the severity of your condition, okay? It's not meant to be the end-all, be-all. You don't need to have every symptom tied to a certain rating. In fact, you don't even need to have any of the symptoms tied to that specific rating as long as your overall level of impairment warrants that approximate level. Okay, now that's right in case law. But what we've seen is VA raters will typically rely upon what's in the written record, in your medical records. They'll review your statements, and then the approximate level that the compensation and pension examiner has you at. So with that being said, I think you should go through the law, 38 CFR Part 4, the schedule for rating disabilities, for all the conditions that you're claiming, and you need to know approximately where you fall. Okay, now you may not be 100% disabled. You might not be 70. You might be 10, right? Or you might be 30. But I think you need to have a baseline understanding based upon how things are written in the law so that you can be prepared to tell the compensation and pension examiner your true story, okay? I think it's absolutely crucial that you do that. Make sure you scroll all the way down. There's some high-value resources in the description. There's also, please keep asking your questions in the comments section, and I'm going to come back and try to answer them. Okay. All right. So let's go on to tip number 4. Do not have your best day. What does this mean? This absolutely does not mean that you should lie or stretch the truth. That is not what I'm saying. What this means is that you need to tell the examiner how you are on your very worst days. Okay. So remember, I said the compensation and pension exam is a snapshot of how you're doing on that day and that day only, okay? Well, I don't know about you, but what we've seen is a lot of times a veteran's symptoms will ebb and flow over time, okay? And so what I mean is that if you're having a good day, but it's unusual, and that's not how you normally are, you need to tell the examiner that, okay? Now, it's okay to say something like, you know, my depression is actually a little bit lower today than it normally is, but I'll tell you, on most days, my level of depression is this, right? I'm having trouble getting going in the morning. I used to enjoy reading. I used to enjoy playing sports. And, I can't do those things anymore. Or because of the chronic pain that I'm in, I can't do those activities anymore. And that's led me to be depressed and to have anxiety. Okay. So it's okay to say stuff like that. So that's what I mean when I say, do not have your best day. You've got to talk about how you are on your worst days. And if you need to insert a caveat to the C&P examiner, that's okay. I think it just adds to your credibility and your honesty and your truthfulness. Okay. Tip number 5, be uncomfortably vulnerable. This is probably the number one tip that I share for vets. Okay. If you want to write this down, this would be something to write down and then to really think about what this means for you and your disability conditions. Okay. Be uncomfortably vulnerable. What this means, veterans, is that if it's uncomfortable, if it's awkward, if it's something that you absolutely do not want to share to someone who doesn't know you, okay, a C&P examiner, maybe it's stuff you don't even want to share with people who do know you, okay, that means you need to share it, okay? It means you're on the right track. So let me give you a couple examples of what this means, okay? I like to use the examples here of sexual dysfunction because I don't know about you, but nobody wants to talk about their sexual dysfunction, okay? You don't want to talk about it with somebody you do know. You certainly don't want to talk about it with somebody you don't know, okay? A C&P examiner that you just met who has no idea who you are, and you have no idea who they are, right? So obviously it creates this awkward barrier where you maybe are hesitant to say things. You don't want to talk about things that are uncomfortable, okay? That means you need to tell them. So for example, if your mental health condition is so severe that you're taking all these medications, and trust me, I've tried them all. I've tried them all. Some medications work better than others. Some don't work at all. Some can actually make your symptoms worse. All right, I've had some mental health medications that I've taken in the past where I just lead to sweating. You just pour sweat, and real bad sexual side effects. Okay, so let's say you're taking SSRIs, you're taking antidepressants to try to help manage the symptoms of your mental health condition. You need to talk about perhaps how that's led to sexual dysfunction, right? Erectile dysfunction for men, female sexual arousal disorder in women, and explain how that's harming your relationship with your significant other, and how you're really having a hard time with this. And, maybe you need to make another appointment to go in and talk to a doctor about getting some help, right? There's pills for that, right? There's pills for that. So again, that's what I mean when I talk about this. Be uncomfortably vulnerable. You have to share your uncomfortable truths, okay? And that's what we do at VA Claims Insider. We give you permission inside of our programs to be you. It's okay to not be okay. I will forever say that. It is okay not to be okay. Okay. What's not okay is if you don't get help. What's not okay is if you're not honest about it. What's not okay is if you don't share with your loved ones what is happening. Okay. And I've been there, right? We're fellow vets. We try to play tough guy and gal. We try to act like everything's okay. We try to act like we're not in pain, right? We try to act like we don't have a mental health condition, and we self-medicate. I've been there. I've been down that death spiral, vets, and I'm telling you that there's a way out. Okay, I'm telling you, there is a way out, and I want you to hear this message today from me right here, right now. No matter what situation or condition you're in, Your life matters. God put you here for a reason, to fulfill a purpose, to fulfill a calling, okay? You're here for a reason, and your life matters, okay? Hear me on that. Your life matters, all righty? Now, please, 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 if any of that if you're hurting today, please pick up the phone, call the VA mental health crisis line. There's a live chat, anonymous chat. You can call that hotline number and get help. Please, okay, please do not ever think that your life doesn't matter, because it does, okay? So that's what I mean, though, when I talk about being uncomfortably vulnerable. Share the things that you do not want to discuss with anybody, okay? Why do I say that? You have to get it out there. And those things, those uncomfortable truths, are going to help the C&P examiner gauge just what you're dealing with. What's the severity of this veteran's condition? Whether it's a mental health condition, a knee condition, a back condition, okay? Headaches, whatever it is. Just be prepared to talk about it, okay? All right, tip number 6. Explain how your disability conditions are limiting or affecting your work, your life, and your social functioning. If you really think about this, vets, at the end of the day, the disability compensation system exists to help veterans and to pay you for issues that your service-connected disabilities have led to, right? Dysfunction, negative impact in your economic earning capacity, in your work, in your life, in your social functioning. The system is there to compensate you for those conditions, those disabilities, those impairments that occurred on active duty as a result of active duty. Okay, they were made worse by active duty, or maybe they're proximately due to another service-connected disability that you're dealing with, okay? But you got to be prepared to talk about it. If your headaches are so bad that you've exhausted your sick leave, tell the examiner that, okay? If your chronic pain is so severe that you've gained 40 pounds, you can't work out anymore, you have trouble going for walks, you got to talk about that stuff, okay? You got to explain how your disability conditions are limiting or affecting your work, your life, your social functioning. And we're talking about mental health. I also think you need to think about how is it affecting you socially. Okay, I don't know about you guys. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. I can literally be in a room full of people and feel completely isolated. I can feel like I'm totally disconnected from what's going on. I hear talking, I hear chatter, but I'm not there. I'm not present in the moment. I'm unable to connect with what other people are doing, okay? Maybe you're having that same issue right now where you just don't want to go out, okay? And it's got nothing to do with the coronavirus, right? My life hasn't changed, right? Due to the coronavirus, my life hasn't changed. I'm still in my house. I still don't leave very much, right? And I think, sadly, that's how it is for a lot of veterans. We suffer alone in silence. We lock ourselves in our house, right? We stay there because that's the only place we feel comfortable. And anything outside of that can be overwhelming. In fact, maybe you can even convince yourself that you don't even want to go outside, right? It's safer inside. It's less depressing to sit in your kitchen with a bottle of Jack Daniels at 10 in the morning, okay? But vets, I'm here to tell you that's not normal, okay? And so you need to get help. And, you know, the one thing we don't often talk about regarding your disability conditions is that the goal here is to get better. It's not to get worse. The goal is to get better and to do what we can to help you at least try to stabilize as much as possible to live a normal life. Okay, whatever that means for you now. Okay, your new normal. Okay, so that's what I mean when I talk about explaining how your disabilities are limiting or affecting your life. Tip number 7, know your true story cold as well as any in-service stressor events. Remember that nexus piece. Okay, step 2 of the pillar. Is your disability caused or made worse by your active duty service? If the answer to that is maybe, you have to be prepared to talk about what was that in-service incident, condition, stressor event, deployment, training, rape, assault, battery, verbal abuse, harassment, demotion, Article 15, whatever. What was that thing for you that you believe was the trigger for your condition? Okay, I'll share an example here with you. Okay, I have very severe GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease, acid reflux. Okay, I take medications every day. I have for years, I think dating back to 2008 when I was active duty. I can credit the onset of GERD to a period as a contracting officer where I would show up to the office a lot of times at midnight, right? I had so much going on that I would literally get to the office at midnight. I was sleeping about 3 hours a night, maybe 4 hours. And I would just start working, right? I always constantly felt behind. And I was constantly striving to try to achieve more, to do more, to take on another contract, to help a fellow troop in need, right? That's just my nature, is to try to help. And the stress was so overwhelming for me that that's the first time that I remember having just these severe bouts of acid reflux. And so I finally had to go to the doctor. Okay, I was at Luke Air Force Base in Arizona. I told the doctor what was happening. You know, my chest felt like it was on fire. I felt like I was going to throw up. I was actually throwing up, blood and stools, stuff like that. And the doctor literally looked at me and he's like, "You've got GERD," right? And I'm like, what is GERD? Is that a cancer? Right? Not to make light of cancer, but I didn't know what that was. It scared the heck out of me. And he put me on omeprazole, Prilosec. All right, you can actually get Prilosec over the counter now, which is a good thing. You can also get omeprazole from your VA provider. Okay, a lot of vets have acid reflux. But again, at your C&P exam, you've got to tell the examiner the approximate time frame of when this began. Okay, now it doesn't have to be the exact day, but it should be the approximate time frame, preferably month and year. At worst, the year, right? Hey, this is what I remember, right? I remember why I developed GERD, okay, acid reflux. Okay, so that's a great example for you of how you can talk about those in-service stressor events. And the stressor event might not be a situation where you feared for your life. It might just be stress, right, from the job. It might just be stress from the job, and that might be what caused your irritable bowel syndrome or your GERD, okay, stuff like that, or your headaches. Okay, tip number 8, give the C&P examiner a snapshot image of what your life was like before, during, and after service. This is important because this comes down to the nexus again. And the example I like to use here is flat feet or pes planus, okay? A lot of veterans enter active duty with pre-existing flat feet, okay, also known as pes planus. Now, flat feet is not a compensatable, it's not a rateable disability under the law. Flat feet is flat feet. Okay, a lot of people have flat feet. So perhaps you got a waiver or you entered the service with flat feet, okay? Here we are years later, you now have a severe condition known as plantar fasciitis, okay, which is severe heel pain. What happens is that soft band of tissue on the bottom of your foot stretches and pulls and becomes inflamed to the point where it hurts so bad, it literally feels like somebody is jabbing a knife right into the bottom of your heel with every step you take. I know that because I have plantar fasciitis in my left heel. Okay. It hurts like a son of a bee. That first step in the morning where you get out of bed and you take that step, it literally feels like somebody is under you coming through the floor, jabbing a knife up your heel. Okay. That's how much plantar fasciitis can hurt. And that plantar fasciitis, though, that is rateable under the law. That can be compensated under the law. So maybe you entered active duty with flat feet, but you never had plantar fasciitis, right? Just because you have flat feet doesn't mean you're going to have plantar fasciitis. You might be fine. You might live your entire life and not have any issues with plantar fasciitis, okay? Okay, so fast forward, though. You served in the military. You're wearing those horrible combat boots. Perhaps they didn't have proper insoles. Maybe you've even developed some type of calcified heel spur on the underside. So let's say that you do some imaging results, like an x-ray, right? And you can see that you've got a calcified heel spur that's developed underneath the heel, right? That's something that potentially results from plantar fasciitis, that constant pulling and wear and tear on that soft tissue of the bottom of your heel can actually develop a calcified heel spur. Okay, now whether that leads to plantar fasciitis is debatable, or whether the heel spur is a result of the plantar fasciitis. My point is, at the C&P exam, they should do some imaging, some x-rays of your feet. Again, this is the example of plantar fasciitis in flat feet. But the reason I'm telling you this example is because I'm sharing with you that you're telling the examiner, I had flat feet. It's a pre-existing condition that I entered the service with, but I didn't have plantar fasciitis until the military, right? And it began approximately during this deployment, right? I was in Iraq, I was in Afghanistan, I was in Panama, right? Maybe it developed during training. Ruck runs, right? We all carried those rucks on our backs. We had physical training, we had combat training, combat survival training, pre-deployment training. Whatever the situation is for you, though, if you now have the condition that is rateable, or it's been made worse as a result of your service, you have to tell the examiner that. Now, hopefully the C&P examiner is asking you questions about your life. Hey, tell me what happened before service. Tell me what happened during service. Tell me what's happened since you left service. Okay, but you need to be prepared to tell your true story. Okay, tip number 9. The C&P examiner is not your friend. Okay, you're not there to make small talk. Okay, they are there to do a job, which is to examine you. Okay, you are there to do a job, which is to be there and to let them examine you and to answer only the questions that they've asked of you. Okay, there's no reason at all to start spouting off crap that you're doing in your life. That's not why you're there. Okay, now unfortunately, what we've also seen are C&P examiners might be trying to trick you, which is just ugly, by the way. It's disgusting. But we've heard that from some of our veterans, that maybe the examiner's trying to trick you into saying something that, you just kind of spout out the mouth. And just don't even go there, okay? Stick to the facts. Stick to your story. You've got a job to do. They've got a job to do, okay? Now, I want to talk about, I've heard vets say, show up looking disheveled and, wearing dirty clothes and don't shower, and come on, right? Come on, man. We're better than that. You don't need to do that. All right. To me, that's part of lying and stretching the truth. Okay. Which is against the law. I don't think you need to do that either. Just show up, take a shower. You can shave, right? You could wear a polo shirt. You could wear some gym clothes. Every time I've ever gone to a C&P exam, I typically wear, like a workout clothes. If you were in the Navy or the Air Force, maybe you're wearing yoga pants. I know if you're Combat Craig, you might be wearing some of those tight, stretchy pants. I don't want to be at that C&P exam. But just show up wearing what you normally wear. Maybe it's sweatpants, flip-flops, whatever. Okay? But take a shower, shave. You can show up looking like that, right? Just be ready to tell your true story. Stick to the facts and stick to the facts only. Okay, that's tip number 9. All right, last but not least, tip number 10, keep a copy of your C&P exam appointment paperwork. This is a new one that I've added. Now, the reason why I say this, vets, is because right now there's about 4 contracted C&P exam companies. LHI, QTC, VES, there's a couple more. There's actually 5, I think. And those independent contractor companies are typically the ones doing your compensation and pension exams now, okay, and for the foreseeable future. The VA is getting out of the C&P exam business, which is good, right? It's good and bad. The good part is you're going to get a C&P exam much faster through the contracting companies. The bad part is the training, the accountability that's required of these private C&P examiners. It's my personal opinion, it's way less than adequate. If you've got a medical license, they're letting anybody in. And so, who knows if the examiner even knows how to conduct an adequate exam, right? Maybe the examiner's not licensed to practice that type of exam that they gave you. Let me share this example. This one is just ugly. We actually had a veteran who had a obstructive sleep apnea exam, C&P exam, over the telephone with a private nurse practitioner who put racist comments in the C&P exam notes. She actually put in the notes, this veteran is an African-American male, and studies show that African-American men are more likely to have obstructive sleep apnea. Seriously? That's true story. Ugly. Okay? My point here, vets, is if you don't have a copy of your paperwork, it's going to be difficult for you to fight back. Okay, if you get a crap C&P exam, or you get somebody who's racist, or you get somebody who doesn't conduct an adequate exam, or maybe they pencil whip in their notes that they conducted a range of motion exam for your knee, but they never did. Right? They're supposed to use a device called a goniometer to measure the approximate impairment, your range of motion, limitation in range of motion. Maybe you have a mental health C&P examiner who puts down the results of your depression screen, or your anxiety screen, or your PCL5 for PTSD screen. Maybe they write results in your C&P exam notes, but you never did those screens, right? Maybe they never administered them, but yet they clicked, veteran said a 3, a 4, a 2, right? Those things can potentially impact your overall rating. If you don't have your paperwork that shows the date, the time, the examiner, and where you are for the exam, it's going to be very difficult for you to fight back if you get a bad exam, or if you disagree with the C&P exam results. If your exam was done at a VA facility by a VA doctor, that means they work for the VA. your C&P exam results should show up on My Healthy Vet in your blue button medical reports, and that happens almost instantly. If your C&P exam was done through a contracted company, the fastest way to get your results is to work through your accredited VSO, okay? Because they have access to VBMS, the Veterans Benefits Management System, and the C&P exam results from a contracted company are going to show up in that system. Okay, so you can ask your accredited representative or agent to pull copies of your C&P exam results if it was done by a contracted company. The other way you can do it is by filing a FOIA request, okay, Freedom of Information Act request to the VA for a complete copy of your C file, your VA claims file. All that is it's every piece of evidence, C&P exam, medical records, buddy letters, personal statements, testimonies, medals, citations, awards, letters, anything, DBQs, nexus letters, anything you've ever included as a part of your claim package should be in your C file. Okay, now the only downside of doing that is it can take a while. We've seen some return in as fast as a couple months. Some can take a year. It's just hit or miss as to why it takes that long. Okay. Appreciate it, insiders. I love y'all. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed my top 10 tips today on compensation and pension exams. Again, you got to know your true story cold. Know what's in your medical records. Be uncomfortably vulnerable. Okay, be prepared. Get there early, right? Don't debate with the examiner. You're not there for a fight. You're not there to make small talk. They're there to do a job. You're there to do a job. Okay, be ready to punch back if you get a bad exam. Okay, but again, I think you're going to be just fine. Be open, be honest, be truthful. Just be you. Okay, I love y'all. Be good. Until next Wednesday, I'll talk to you real soon. Okay, keep asking your questions and we'll try to answer them. Love you guys. Be good.